Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the Homestead. Something a bit different this week. I've interviewed Sarah Pettegree from Bray's Cottage pork pies, who makes some amazing pork pies over in the UK. And we got to talk about all sorts of things, really, but she gave some fascinating insights into food security and her Norfolk diet and how she's managed to avoid stepping into the supermarket for 4 years. So here's the interview, and do enjoy. So, Sarah, thank you so much for giving up some time to talk to me. And when we were organising this, we just said basically we would just have a natter. So we'll have an informal natter, and for the benefit of people watching or listening, we've known each other for quite a while, and I'm trying to work out how long, but all I can say is at least 10 years because I don't really know.
I've been doing the pie thing, Bray's Cottage pork pies, for 17 years.
Ah, right. So
it depends how early on you were aware of us. And knowing you were probably aware of us fairly early on, I think.
But I think possibly we met it was a Twitter thing, because I was, like you, an early adopter to Twitter, and there wasn't many of us in the Norfolk scene tweeting, and probably that's was certainly I think my
there
route.
Weren't many of us, but we were very good.
Weren't we? Yeah. And tell you what, let's talk about the pies for a bit.
Okay,
let's talk about the pies, because is it still just pies, or do you do other stuff now as well?
Sausage rolls.
Sausage rolls, right?
Yeah. We branched out.
So
by a customer.
Sarah makes these amazing pork pies, and
they're not like other pork pies, really, are they?
They're not. They are different. And certain areas. So I'm trying to walk carefully. Certain areas of the UK are quite precious about their pork pies, and your pies are not like those pies.
Certain areas of the UK that I grew up in. So I'll loop back to the kind of beginning of it all. I was always very interested in food, and I had this big bee in my bonnet. It was when I was on Flickr. Do you remember Flickr, the photography social networking before Twitter? And I had this bee in my bonnet about Norfolk food and thinking of it in terms of the terroir, the French sort of, a very much got an idea of a sense of place as related to the food. And that's what's attractive about going to a place, is that kind of food thing. And I thought at the time, this is going back, best part of 20 years, that Norfolk wasn't understanding properly people in Norfolk, but also the kind of tourist boards and things like that weren't understanding properly what an important thing Norfolk food was, because we've got the farmers, we've got the fishermen doing crabs famously, and lobsters and mussels and things like that. So we've got a lot of shellfish that we're known for. And at that time, there was just beginning to be sort of artisan producers. There weren't that many. Anyway, so I had this bee in my bonnet, and I did a sort of Flickr project photographing artisan producers. And around about that time, I became an artisan producer, rather inevitably, and started making pork pies and started a business, mainly because I just didn't want to drive into Norwich anymore to go to work, or go to London, because we'd moved to North Norfolk, and I, flipping wanted to be here. And so I started this business, and that kind of gave me an in with other food producers. And so the pork pie business began. And I always get ridiculous ideas at this time of year, because nobody's buying food and nobody's eating. They're all on diets. They've got no money and things like that. So one January, I said to Derek, how would it be if we just tried to only eat Norfolk food and drink for a month, next month in February? And so at that time, the local paper was much more of a proper local paper than it is now. It's just kind of clickbait and picking things up off the web, but it had proper real journalists. So I fed this into a few journalists and put it on Twitter. that I was just going to eat Norfolk food and drink. February was the most stupid time to do it because you're really limited what's actually growing in February. But I managed, and it was never intended. I called it the Norfolk diet, and there's a thing in Scotland called the Fife diet. There's a lot of produce around the Fife area of Scotland, and they try and encourage people to eat locally. So I kind of took a reference from there, but it was absolutely not going to be some sort of hair shirt thing. I was going to indulge and enjoy this fabulous Norfolk food, which is what I did for a month, and found things I just couldn't get hold of. And again, in those days, it was much more difficult to get hold of Norfolk produced food. For instance, there were no artisan rape oil producers, which is incredible now. But I couldn't get hold of Norfolk rape, though it was growing in the fields all around, but it was all going off to Tesco's or whatever. And there wasn't people like Crush who produce it, and there are various other ones around. So basically, everything I cooked for that month was in Norton's butter. So by the end of the month, I was actually getting a bit fed up of butter, but I could trace that to a particular Norfolk dairy. So anyway, things have really moved on with Norfolk food and drink since, but it's always been a bit of a thing for me to try. And the other thing about doing the Norfolk diet, which then grew into a little, not a business, a sort of not-for-profit business, if you like. We set up a couple of friends, and I set up a farmers market in Norwich only for Norfolk producers to try and encourage Norfolk producers. And we did a couple of other things like that. And it was just all about fun, really, and raising awareness of Norfolk food amongst Norfolk people and amongst people from further afield. And anyway, so one of the things that it really brought home to me, because I had no choice, was seasonality. And, you know, I thought I was aware of seasonality, but when you can only eat cabbage, there are no tomatoes, there is no lettuce or anything like that. It really actually sort of brought home to me how it really is to eat properly seasonally. You know, if there was anything like jams and things like that produced in Norfolk, then I was all over them. But, you know, for things like vegetables, you know, that it really was interesting trying to sort of, you know, have this lovely indulgent food when, you know, there isn't that much food around. So that was kind of, has always stuck with me, that idea of seasonality, and I try and eat still as seasonally as I can and as locally as I can.
So, because I remember in that diet you put a shout out on Twitter, and we'd grown some garlic, I think, and so in our back garden. So Gita was always
nothing like your current back garden.
Well, I know. I mean, it's really weird because I do say when I came here, and it is largely true. Very much then it was me. It was Gita saying, dig this for me or dig that for me. And I was doing it as a task rather than wanting to garden, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. Yeah. And it, you know, it was a chore, I suppose, you know, water the vegetables or whatever. I wasn't especially interested in acquiring that skill set of how you grow stuff. I do remember, and garlic is you know, we grow obviously a lot of garlic here. We plant about 200 garlics every year. Well, we have the intention of growing 200 every year. Whether they all come out, we'll wait and see very soon, actually. But so it's a lot of garlic, and obviously back then it was probably just a handful. But the point that I'm making is, to Gita, it was second nature. To me, it was something completely new. But anyway, there was the garlic, and we could say, well, here, you know, here's some Norfolk grown garlic because we've grown it.
Well, I was terrifically grateful.
I mean, listen, you know, obviously, it's hard to imagine now a life without garlic. You know, as a flavouring, and I don't go crazy for garlic, but as a flavouring, I think, you know, it's it's amazing. And if you're doing something where you're stuck for flavours, then garlic can do a lot for a lot of dishes.
Yeah, no, I'm never without garlic, and I also have garlic in the freezer as well, chopped garlic in the freezer.
And you also forage for wild garlic, I remember as well. You do foraging. You enjoy foraging.
Yes, yeah. I love the process of picking blackberries and understanding what plants are edible and what plants aren't edible. A bit, I'm not sort of like, a dyed-in-the-wool forager, but I enjoy the process. I think there's something about actually standing on a late summer day and picking blackberries. I suppose, especially, if you've done it as a child in the countryside, or picking mushrooms or something like that. It just feels just right. It's a very centering process. I love it, and it's free.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've got lots. Ironically, we don't have the opportunity to forage blackberries. It's that's one of those things that we can't. You can't do. I know we have an abundance of things that we can do, and we're very grateful for that. But that's one thing that we remember about the UK that we can no longer do, and sloes as well, of course. But anyway, the hedgerow stuff, foraging. We are desperately trying to coax a blackberry plant to establish itself here, as we've done. We've been incredibly patient over the last 5 years, and slowly it's growing. And last year we got 5 blackberries off it, I think.
Judgment.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's struggling with the climate. It's not something we brought with us, but it's but it is growing slowly.
Here, you just spend your life battling against them because they grow like wildfire.
We've got a swamp. I'm looking for a better word than swamp, but anyway, in the forest, part of it is quite swampy, and cranberries grow there. So that's. I think a lot of people, when you think of foraging, probably the first thing people think of is mushrooms.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I remember, coming here was that Gita said, we've got this swamp, pervs in Latvian, and there's cranberries grow there, and it's like, what? I thought they,
in New England?
yeah. And she keeps insisting me it's all connected to the moon as well. They grow bigger and they move out apparently in the moon. I don't know about that, but
well, a lot of people are very into this biodynamic gardening idea, aren't they?
Yeah.
Having things with horns on the certain day of the moon and things like that.
Yeah, Gita's mum's really into that. I have done a lot of debunking and sort of said, there's a lot of
probably room for that.
There's variables here that are at play that we need to think of as well. But I think I wouldn't knock someone for following that system if it works for them, because it has worked for our ancestors. But just don't say that system works and I'm doing it wrong. That's the kind of thing that I don't like.
I think the key thing is, the deeper you can get understanding the countryside and the plants and the birds and things like that, the closer you are to being able to successfully work with it. And if it's got a bit of mythology in there as well, then that's just fun.
Yeah. I can see some of the points about it, but I don't follow all of it.
No.
And
I didn't expect you would.
No. I do get. I kind of, first of all, I found it very annoying and frustrating, and now there's a bit of a joke in the household about, Gita's mum still tells me when it's growing season, so that that it won't start yet, but what I should be doing on what day, and or I'll even ask her, what should I be doing today, sort of thing, as more of a ingest, I suppose, than anything. I think the deal breaker for me was when she buys a magazine with a calendar in it, and then we bought 2 other magazines, each with growing calendars, and they all had different things to do on different dates. It was just a complete mess, and you think, and then that's when I sort of said, I'm sorry, but no, But anyway, yeah, it's still piques my interest, shall I say. Nothing more than that. But yeah, I was going to say about the cranberries, really. It was just a bit of a and of course we have blueberries in the forest, and even then it's learning well, and Gita knows the stuff far more than me. I'm learning it from her. She knows her parents' forest better than me, but it's like, these blueberries will grow here this season, or it won't be a good blueberry season this year in this patch because of X, and obviously we're also managing the forest and having some parts felled and then regrowing, and with those trees we won't see. There's that quote, isn't there, about society works when people plant trees that they won't sit under the shade, and that for me was like, actually we won't see these trees be felled, but even that has an effect on that opening certain parts can allow the blueberries to then thrive, and stuff like that, and lingonberries, and obviously the mushrooms in the mushroom season, chanterelles. And what I found amazing is, Gita went out with a basket and picked one day. She had a good crop of chanterelles, and then I weighed them and looked on the internet, because if you can get something, we never buy chanterelles ever. We just get them from the forest, and then that is that seasonality. There's that time when it happens, and we enjoy it. And yeah, they do chop them and fry them and freeze them and stuff like that. And I said, I wonder what they cost in England, these chanterelles, sort of thing. And it was, I don't know, what, 30, 40 pounds a kilo or something, and she had a couple of kilos. I said, you've got 65 pounds of mushrooms there. You've just gone out in the morning and picked
So where this has all led me, my current claim to fame would be so exaggerating it, but I mention it once in a while to people before they run away. I haven't actually been in a supermarket since March the 12th, I think, 2020. So
Wow.
we're coming up to four years since I've set foot in a supermarket. And this is all kind of like, because we were talking about food security and things like that. I think, part of it is that, I want to try and not give my money to Tesco's and, big shareholders who I think are doing very bad things to the nation's health internationally as well, all the other places that are similarly being presented with such a tiny restricted diet. The number of vegetables the average person eats is absolutely tiny, and ultra processed foods as well. So, I just don't want to give my money to that. I want to give my money to people who are actually producing food, and encourage them to sort of be more diverse and all the rest of it. So basically, for vegetables and things, we are really lucky around here that we've got farm shops that buy locally. So Bintry farm shop is a few miles down the road, and Algae grows his own vegetables there. And also they buy from Fresh Approach, who are a really good vegetable grower. And Back to the Garden, who are an organic shop. They have brilliant things, like fresh turmeric and things like that. So it's no hardship at all buying from those shops. And I do buy, I don't actually sort of, confine myself completely, but as much as possible, we eat seasonally. I very much try and I like the rhythm of buying, at this time of year, kalettes and cabbages and things like that. And then once British grown tomatoes appear, that's just like, wow, that's lovely. Lovely tasting tomatoes. Asparagus is a big thing round here, and I'm really excited when the first asparagus turns up. And then I think, how much? Because the first lot's really expensive, so I sort of hold off. But then I just kind of gorge myself on asparagus.
I did. I don't know if you've seen this week's walkabout, but I mentioned the Norfolk asparagus season in it, and I got onto the subject of seasonality, but and the first thing that came to mind was this, the Norfolk asparagus season, and I said I have these memories of we wait and wait and wait and wait, and then suddenly it happens. There's lots of talk about it. When's it going to happen? When's it going to start? When's that lay-by? There was always a seller in the lay-by when you part onto Norwich. Yeah. And it's like, and Gita really got into it as well. It's like, and then it's gone. It seems within a few weeks it's gone. Everyone's gorged themselves on asparagus, couldn't get enough of it, and then we just wait until the next.
And it'll be back next year.
I couldn't remember when it was, but from memory, was it late April, early May or something, or May, somewhere around there, wasn't it? I think
it finishes on June the 21st.
Okay, so
picking on New Year's. Oh, not on New Year's. On Midsummer's Day. That traditionally they stop picking, because then they let the asparagus ferns grow up and strengthen the rest of the plant. Can you grow asparagus there?
Yeah, we have got asparagus, a couple of plants. I think I might get. I tried to grow some asparagus. First year here, we could still import seeds from the UK, and I bought 50 pink asparagus seeds, and it's a long haul, to grow asparagus from seed. It's 3 years minimum,
absolutely.
and it
a long haul. Have you got
crowns?
Crowns, that's the word. Yeah.
And it was by the end of the 3 years, I think we had 3 plants left that survived, and I don't know whether they've survived this winter, but they didn't do much. So I think we are going to have to get some crowns. Now we've kind of got a few more things infrastructure-wise in play. We've got a bit more of a vision of where things can be, because obviously asparagus is in for the long haul. Once you've put it in, it's in. You don't then do it another place somewhere else another year, sort of thing, like garlic or whatever, or potatoes. So it's trying to find that place that we know we're committed to that for 20 years for that asparagus to be there, sort of thing. That's the other thing is related. The other thing related to that is parsnips. We're the Brits. We love our parsnips, and we buy them in bags. Well, maybe you don't. I don't know, but most people,
No, I don't buy them in bags.
Well, not any, but
I buy them in a shopping bag.
Yeah, but we don't buy one. I think is more my point I'm alluding to is we buy a kilo or 2 kilos or whatever, and here it was they had the storeholder had 4 on sale, and you would buy one, and because they're grated as a seasoning into soups and stored in the pantry. And and I started saying, there's always a joke here that if Brits go and buy parsnips from it's normally the central market when we lived in Riga, it's considered a wholesale order, because we would go and buy a couple of kilos and just take them all, because
there's nothing nicer than a roast parsnip.
Yeah, and I managed to get grow those here. So despite people saying, "Oh, you never get them to grow here in Latvia," but I had. So it's wonderful to grow. I know we grow a lot of stuff, but parsnips was one of those things that I really wanted to kind of conquer and get going, and did. But yeah, so that's another thing where bit of education of actually you can eat parsnips. You don't have to grate them just grate them into a soup. You can chop them and roast them, and they're delicious and sweet.
Yeah, and they're fabulous things. Yeah, so that's my vegetables mostly. In the summer I do grow a bit. But we're always really busy at work in the summer. That's our busy time. So, I get a bit despondent because I, just don't water the tomatoes enough and things like that, because I'm dashing here and there. So, most of my vegetables I'm growing. During the pandemic, I used to have vegetable delivery from Norfolk Veg Box, which was great. And they were a real lifesaver. But now I just go to the farm shops locally. on sort of passing. So kind of weeks worth at a time. So I'm not going shopping every day, far from it. And then once a week, generally, we buy a chicken from Martin's farm, which are free-range chickens. And they cost, like £12 or something like that. Whereas I think in a supermarket here, I don't know what they cost these days, but, it would be sort of £3 or £4 or something for a chicken, a bog standard chicken. And, but I can make that last all week, really, just by, having a bit of pasta and stir fry and whatever. We roast it and then we, make it last and then boil stock for soup. So although it costs a lot initially, this chicken, I know it's had a half decent life, and they just taste nothing like anything else, even to feel it. The first thing I noticed when we first came to the village and started getting Martin's Farm's chickens was when you touch the skin of it, it's dry. It's like touching the back of your hand. If you buy chicken from a supermarket or whatever, because it's been through goodness knows what process, it's always wet and clammy. And just that sort of, and again, it's a short supply chain because the chicken grew in the village, died in the village, came to my kitchen. There's not much room for messing about with it. And they're running around and they're eating grass and worms and things like that. So it does make a difference to how the quality of the thing. So I mean, whatever you do, you're talking from a point of privilege, partly because of where we live, that these things are easily available here, but only because people do buy them. If people stopped bothering and did everything at Tesco's, then it wouldn't be here. But and also because some people can't afford any food at the moment, and obviously we are spending money on food, but I think we are happy to spend a higher percentage of our income prioritize food, I suppose, in our budget. We don't sort of probably a lot of things that other people do that we're not really doing, but we are eating half decently. But it's not that, because it's seasonal, and because again it's a privilege, but I've got half decent cooking skills, so I can rustle a meal out of not very much quite easily. So that really brings the price of doing all this sort of thing down. So that's meat, and I'm very keen on hodmedod's. Were hodmedod's a thing when you?
Yes, I've spoken to. It was me who spoke to what's his name at the Norfolk show and inspired him to start doing the the roasted beans.
Things,
yeah,
good for you. So hodmedod's are in Suffolk, on the northern borders of Suffolk, so they're almost Norfolk. I consider that they're Norfolk, and they have got this network of regenerative farmers who are growing lentils and chickpeas and beans and different types of heritage grains, different sorts of wheats, emmet wheat and things like that. And that is one of the things that people's diets since the Industrial Revolution especially, when they dig up people from glaciers and examine the contents of their stomach, and they're like 2,000 or 3,000 years old, the amount of different grains and things that those people have been eating, whereas now we just eat a very bog standard wheat. There's a brilliant book by a chap called Dan Saladino who examines all this. He's one of the food program people on Radio 4, and he's looked at around the world what people are eating and where people are eating more divergent diets, and where they're eating very contracted diets, and it really does impact people's health and cognition and all sorts of things. So anyway, I buy a lot of that sort of thing from Hodmedod's, and I love a bean. Derek's less keen on a bean, but he's coming round to it slowly, I think.
Legumes. You love a good legume,
Yes.
yeah?
A legume.
Legume, yeah.
Yeah, so I buy. So what else do we buy? That's sort of the main thing. Oh, obviously we can get hold of crabs and things like that. Again, I try to just have crabs in the summer because of the seasonality. You can get them all year round, but I think, they should be fishing for them in the proper seasons myself. And I had a lovely delivery of 32 herrings from somebody in Lowestoft. So I gutted all those and stuck them in the freezer. So we're eating a lot of herring at the moment, which is lovely. But that's sort of, but it's a lot. It's a lot of different things we eat, and I'm always picking up recipes and things like that. But having said that, I haven't been in the supermarket. A person, apart from needing a lemon, does need a frozen pea and does need a tin of tomatoes and toilet rolls and,
Of course.
things like that. Yeah, of course. Lowering the tone. But anyway, there are certain boring things that, you're not going to go and get from Bintry Farm Shop or back to the garden or wherever that aren't produced by lovely little artisan people. So about once a month or every 6 weeks, I have a supermarket delivery, and it's largely frozen stuff and that what I call boring stuff. That so I'm not sort of absolutely, and so the pandemic started, and I was very protective of us, and I was particularly protective of Derek because at the time it seemed like chaps were dying more of COVID. And, I just got this vision that I didn't want him ending up in hospital upside down on a ventilator. And we could do it as well because of where we live. And we furloughed all the staff at HQ. So it was just Derek and I. We almost killed ourselves in other ways through sheer hard work, but we get the business going. And we didn't let anybody else in the premises and all that. So not going to the supermarket happened really because of that. But then I sort of thought, actually, I quite like this. I never really liked supermarket shopping. And I'm, setting up these little networks of where I can get my food from. And I think I'll see how long I can carry on doing that. So, as I say, I literally have not stepped foot in a supermarket for 4 years, and it's like 10 minutes for the whole process, which is lovely. So it feels like a much better quality of life not going in supermarkets now. So I'm kind of thrilled with it. And as I say, I didn't know how long I would keep it up, but it has been 4 years nearly now until since I last went in one. So I love not going to a supermarket. If I was in France or Latvia, I wouldn't be able to resist going in.
Of course.
To see all the exciting stuff. But again, because I'm not doing impulse shopping, because it's just a shopping list online, it does mean that I'm not sort of buying things that then sit in the cupboard forever. I'm buying things that I actually need. So not supermarket shopping and buying locally kind of makes me quite happy, really. Pre-industrial revolution food. And there's another chap in the UK who's probably not on your radar called Chris Van Tulloken, and he's a doctor as well, and he is an identical twin. So in his early days,
we do know
he was
that,
part of this cohort, and he's really, really interested in ultra-processed food, which he would call food-like substances, not food, and all things that manufacturers use in food. And it's beginning to look as if like the global obesity crisis is very linked to ultra processed food. So we basically don't have ultra processed food in the house. Everything is normal food, as I would call it, and I try and get as much diversity in as possible. And by shopping locally the way that we do, it kind of all works pretty well, and we'll live forever.
I one of the things that I remember, and of course it is changing, but one of the things I remember when I first came, well, even when we moved 5 years ago, is the lack of freezers, the lack of frozen food. Well, not really freezers, but frozen ready meals in supermarkets.
Yeah.
Well, not ready meals, but the freezers here were things like ice cream and frozen prawns and fish, because obviously there's a lot more fish availability here. Latvians love their fish, so that's really what freezers were for.
For ingredients.
Well, yeah, exactly, and that's what I think I read somewhere that, or I saw, it could be connected to what you're talking about. But anything with more than 5 ingredients in it is not great, and really we should shop for ingredients rather than for processed food. And still today, really, I mean, slowly I'm starting to see more. Convenience tends to be ultra processed. Ultimately, there's cooking. Many people see cooking as an inconvenience, and so they try to shortcut that.
Yeah.
Something you said a while back was about, and a lot of people don't think about, is the nutritional value of food. Particularly, I'm thinking about vegetables. When you pick up a head of broccoli or whatever, or carrot off of a specifically supermarket shelf, you don't really think about what's in it in terms of you expect that a carrot that comes out of the ground today is the same as a carrot that came out of the ground. A carrot is a carrot, but actually the nutritional value over years has been declining. They're still orange and they're still juicy, but the nutritional value of it, that's more down to the quality of the soils, but because of the supermarkets demanding lower prices, farmers have to work harder to get their things, so they're making the soil work harder,
and inputting more chemicals and things rather than
which shortcut the life of the soil, sort of thing, and so the soil can't put the nutrition into the food, sort of thing.
I do feel that the next step for me would be to eat organically, but when I go to Algie's farm shop, I know how he farms, and it's not organically. Part of me is sort of thinking at the back of my mind, should I just be buying organic vegetables and things? But they're not so easily available. So,
well, the next step is regenerative agriculture, which is one step further than organic. In terms of caring for the soil, in less machinery, less tillage, and stuff like that.
There's a great farmer locally called Jeremy Buxton, one of the millions of Buxtons in Norfolk, and he's turning his farm into a regenerative farm. He's just started growing by crops, so you would have a grain growing with a legume. The legume,
the nitrogen fixer,
feed the grain, and you harvest it all together, and then you send it off to the processor, who then has got sort of, I suppose, like riddles or something that keeps the bean and lets the grain through, and sell them as separate foodstuffs. And again, Hodmedods are doing this as well. But I'm really pleased that Jeremy's doing it so close by. He's just on the other side of Reefham, so he's very close by to us. So I think we're all quite proud of that he's actually stepping up and doing it.
Oh, that's great.
And I went to a farm in Suffolk with Jane, my friend Jane, and called Wakelands Farm, and they've been doing this for a long time. They've been associated with Hodmedods, and they are growing lentils and chickpeas and things like that, and doing it regeneratively. So it's great. And in alleys of trees, so it's the agroforestry things. Crops from the trees, and you get crops in between them from lentils and whatever. It's great.
I was thinking about contacting you earlier, actually. I had an idea, something you just said earlier, and reminded me about. I guess it's connected to things that I literally can't buy here because I now live in Latvia and not in the UK. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, what do I miss? And
you want me to come on holiday with a suitcase?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to organise it off. Yeah. No, I had an idea about. It's not an idea really. It's a follow-on for something I've actually been doing. So. For example, when we moved to Latvia the first time 18, 19 years ago, curry was not even on the radar here. There was, so whereas I would have picked a jar up off the supermarket and made that, made a curry. Just suddenly that wasn't a thing. And I remember, even to get the spices, we had to go and knock on the back door of some like a Hare Krishna type restaurant. And the chef would come out and sell you sort of, cumin or whatever, and or more of the more exotic spices. And so I had to learn from scratch to make a curry, by watching videos on YouTube and whatever. And
which is nicer.
Yeah. But and that led to making more recently making my own bacon because I wasn't, we a few years ago, we raised a couple of pigs, and so to make bacon that was literally from the pig that you'd grown and looked after, and it was quite amazing. But one of the things that I still miss is your pies, pork pies, and and your pies specifically. And so I had an idea of, and actually there are no pork pies here, and Latvians love.
There are no pork pies outside the UK. Basically, it's astonished me when I found out, and in fact, quite geographically restricted in the UK. Certainly were when we first started.
And so I had an idea of I'll tell you how it started. It was with sausages. I did a video on sausages, and then I was moaning about the quality of wet sausages here in Latvia. Latvia is great with charcuterie type sausages and more things like what we would call frankfurters, I suppose, and stuff like that. That's a more common sausage, quote unquote, here. And there are now a couple, and what they were doing with sausages were it just wasn't great, or they were filling them full of
rust,
sort of local spices, which didn't quite agree with me. So they do love their I'm trying to think of the seed now, the not cumin, caraway seeds. Oh my word! Yeah. You kind of look at this sausage will look amazing, and you kind of cut into it, and then it'll be full of caraway seeds. It's like, who could possibly eat this? So I was trying to get Mr. Plume on board and do a thing where we make sausages, and I bought a mincer and all the stuff to make it, and the sausage casings and everything, but I've never pinned him down to coming on to do a video. But I had the same idea, so I thought, well, actually I could do something with you about pork pies. And I know you're not going to give away your secret recipe, but I'm sure you've got some insights on how to make a good pork pie.
I have a couple of
yeah, and perhaps we could do that as a separate video sometime, because I know the local market would love pork pies. Yeah. Looking at all the other foods that they eat here, all the cured meats and the specky, which is the fat, when
the broad umbrella of Europeans have come and eaten them at the farmers market, it's always been great fun because they have no idea what this food is. And then, Germans, obviously, it's, like, this is really nice. But French and Italian as well, I've had big hits with them. So yeah, it's an untapped field, I've always felt, out there.
Yeah,
franchise you if you've not got too much else on.
That's right. So we'll have a go at that one day. I'll work that out, and how we can do. Yeah, so I couldn't think of other there may be other things, pasties. I think I had an idea. Then I could think of a list of things, and I could get respective experts to talk about how to sort of best do that. A curry is a good example. There's lots of things I miss, quote unquote. Fish and chips is a good example.
Yeah.
And that if there was one thing that we really missed, it would be fish and chips. Yeah, okay. I miss being able to go and have a takeaway, or going to a good Indian restaurant, and enjoying a meal and or Chinese or whatever. But we learned to, Chinese. Chinese stir fry is one of those great examples where we can go out into the garden and we pick the stuff out of the heads, the little heads of broccoli and pull a couple of early carrots up and mange too and stuff like that, and we can make that. Can't say taste of home because it's Chinese food, but it is that what we link to the UK.
Actually, a stir fry is like the easiest thing in the world to actually cook once you've got your bits and bobs.
Yeah. So we are learning slowly how to do those things, and there's an enjoyment in I think I'm saying the process of doing it, and skill acquisition of actually. This isn't that hard to make. Why have I never made it before?
Well, I mean, all the crazy things you did with the pork pies, your pieception.
Yes.
Making Scotch egg pork pies, and God knows, I can't remember
It's still up there. It's still there. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I scotched. I think it started off with just a joke, wasn't it? I sliced some pork pie and put it in a roll. I think that's how it started, and then I said, "Oh, actually, there's lots of things." So I then got more adventurous, and I think eventually I scotched. A pork pie, and not only was it just a pork pie, it was one of your breakfast pork pies. So it had individual it was kind of Scotch, which is obviously the meat and the breadcrumb, and then your pie, and then there was the beans and the bacon and other things that you put in there. So
I think playing with your food is just brilliant. Creating, I mean, it's what Tim does as well. With his patisserie. A lot of it is playing with food, isn't it?
Yeah, having fun. I think I mentioned that I did a video about a couple of weeks ago about planning. Everyone now starts thinking about planning their garden, and I sort of was trying to distill everything that I'd learnt about gardening into making it into not really a system, but a methodology or a philosophy. And so my philosophy is maximum harvest, minimum effort. There was the top kind of core goal, and then to make that work you needed some rules. So I could achieve maximum yield by throwing chemicals on the garden, so I need a rule to counter that. So rule one was that it had to be organic. I think I can't remember the exact wording, but it had to be organic. And rule two was you must have fun. And that was my two rules for gardening, which for the maximum harvest, minimum effort was organic, must have fun.
Fun is so important, and that's what people always say when they come in to work to Pi HQ. People say when they come in, it's very calm in here. They always say it's very calm and clean, but also we do have quite a lot of fun as well, and sort of just sort of friendship and messing around and enjoying each other's company as well, which is really plan A.
If you enjoy your work, then it's not work, is it? I think they say. Yeah. So what's to sort of coming towards the end? What is I've been out of it for 5 years, or out of North for 5 years. What's the food scene now like? Is it as it was? Is it better? Is there even more? Is there still? I always remember it. There was always an abundance of new producers, small producers, and they were putting some of them. Would be successful and some wouldn't, but there was always a good.
No, I think there is definitely that still happening. There's a tofu producer in Lenwade, and there's a very good kind of kimchi sauerkraut producer as well. So they're sort of moving on, pushing the boundaries further with things that we almost hadn't heard of going back 17 years. Certainly fermenting things was like, you do what to your cabbage? So that's because during the pandemic, obviously there were no events, and so we were working really, really hard during the week, and we built up the mail order side quite a lot. And then at weekends, we just kind of like collapsed and did admin. But we realised that actually weekends, which we hadn't had for years and years and years, designated weekends, were fantastic. And so I stopped doing anything that fit into weekends. So I stopped doing the courses with Tim, and I stopped doing farmers markets and events. And we just rely on work doing the 5 days a week. So that means I'm a lot out of the loop, and I'm a lot out of the social thing of it as well, which I do miss. I don't see, several times a year at Aylsham and North Norfolk Food Festival and things like that. People to spark off and sympathise with, and and just sort of regular faces. So because I'm not doing that anymore, and also having done events for so long, I would no more dream of going into the food area at the Norfolk show than I would fly, because it's just quite, even gazebos are quite triggering. I spent so much time underneath them trying to stop them blowing away in the wind and things. So I'm not doing that kind of farmers markety type observation, but it's kind of pushing the food out as well into sort of more modern, I suppose, areas each time. The boundary, there'll be I don't know what, Japanese food or something soon, or so it is all going on. Norfolk is still great for food, and it's a if you put the effort in, if you come to Norfolk, it is a food experience to find what actually is indigenous to Norfolk and what the new trends are and things, how we're all eating. One thing I was going to say about the cheese thing, I've forgotten, because I've done this for years, because I used to do it with Jules in Wells as well. Not wanting to trigger you at all. But because Jules would always produce all these interesting things, and I didn't understand what they were. He had a charcuterie shop in Wales. I didn't understand what he was producing, so I just used to go and I used to say, here's £10. You give me what you want. And so he'd scurry around and give me £10 worth of something interesting. And I did that quite often. And now with Aaron, who sells the cheese and also sells our pies, I've got a subscription service going. So when I drop the pies off at Aaron's cheese shed, in the fridge is a little box, which is always my box. And he puts cheese in, £10 worth of cheese every week. And I've got a standing order, and he puts the cheese in. And so he dictates what cheese we're going to have that week. And I love that. I love being pushed by producers to do that. So I think sort of informal subscription type things, inviting people to give you what they think. It's like going to a restaurant that has no menu and they just feed you. I love that. Obviously, you wouldn't want cheese. But...
No, obviously. Yeah, that's the only triggering thing is the cheese talk. Yeah. Think of something else then, but I can't think now. No, I know what it was. I always enjoyed stroke. I say miss. I don't know how much of it is for me is a language thing now being in Latvia, but that is something I will overcome. But is going to a shop a shop. Let's say the butcher's, Licorice Hine or something, and you can say to someone like Icarus or other producers, what do you recommend? I'll go by what you say this week, and I'll or I've got some really nice lamb chops, or I've got some seasonal purple sprout and broccoli or something like that. Is coming on. Yeah. What have you got new this week and stuff like that, and I always enjoyed that part of it, and then you go away and do something with it.
Pushes you a bit further out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and so I think I'm not saying that doesn't happen here, although I mentioned before, I mean, Latvia has a rich small producer type thing going on here. We just don't particularly have it where we are, Right. It's sometimes you will what's quite nice is you'll rock up to Rimi or one of the supermarkets here, and they've got small producers outside. That kind of collaboration. Outside of a supermarket, which I think is fantastic. So, and occasionally we go to once a year they have, because we're not far from the border. They have something called a border market in a town called Valga, which is 40 kilometres from us. So a town Estonian and Latvian border.
Right.
So the town is one town but sits in two countries. And one side's called Valga and the other side is called Valka. And they have what they call a spring border market, and it's huge, absolutely ginormous, and it covers all spectrums, not just food, but gardening and bric-a-brac and stuff like that. And so you can go and spend a day just wandering around looking at what's sort of happening and we often pick up plants or whatever, and obviously some food. But you get producers from Estonia and Latvia, both at this market.
Are there sort of independent farm shops like we have here?
Not really. We still have what I call an old-fashioned market building in Valmiera, our nearest city. So we do, and there you can get. That's where we get a lot of meat there. So we can go to, producers renting a stand inside there, and you can, the turkey producer. There's pork, obviously, is the big meat here, and so there's a lot of pork producers, as well as little, ladies, aunties selling their pickled wares and some veg. And outside there's a lot of flower stalls, and you get a fishmonger turn up. His outside stalls as well. But the great thing is there you can go and we could, if we wanted to, go and forage in our forest and then go to the market and just rent a stall for one morning and sell. And that happens a lot. Obviously there's a lot of, you go around checking all the prices of all the people that it's interesting to see how they value their time in picking, foraging. You always know who's foraged and who hasn't by the way it's presented. But
I love that. When we used to go to France, and I think France has changed a lot as well, probably. But when we first used to go to France 30 years ago, you go to a market and there would be the market stalls who always go every week. But then you would get little old ladies sitting on a stool with some mushrooms in front of them on a cloth, and that's just felt like magic.
Yeah, and I think in this, where we're very price conscious these days, and the market, if you're capitalist, shall we say, it's really hard to get your head around the concept. If you were a big capitalist and you came to visit, it would be really difficult to get your head around someone who's just got 2 trays of blueberries. They've gone out in the morning and found some blueberries in the forest, and they brought them to sell at the market, and they value that. The whole process of the labour it's not even considering. They're not looking to make some money. It's that experience, and then they go to the market and they probably talk to people and they sell their 2 little punnets of blueberries or chanterelles or whatever they are.
Shopping themselves.
Yeah, that's it. It's lovely, that kind of aspect of it.
It is really nice. Yeah.
Good. Well, Sarah, thank you again so much for spending some time and talking about all this sort of stuff. And just quickly, how can people find you on the internet and Bray's pork pies and order stuff and all that kind of
So if you Google Bray's cottage pork pies, try and avoid going to Not on the High Street, because we do sell our pork pies through Not on the High Street, and obviously that's not our website. But if you find our website, Bray's Cottage, so Bray like the donkey, Brays, Bray's Cottage pork pies, or pork pies Norfolk or something like that, then you can find our website, which has got all sorts of interesting things. Like one of our big things is celebration pies. So we sell quite large pies for special occasions with messages in pastry. And we've got some suggestions on our website, but also you can just sort of, make up something and put it on personalise your pork pie. And that they are very often given as gifts. So that's on there. But there's stuff about our story and all the rest of it. And lots of pretty pictures, because I'm into pretty pictures. So Bray's Cottage pork pies.
Great. Well, I'll link to that in the description notes below as well, and link to that video that I made about you as well, the story with, again,
We're also on Facebook and Instagram, but I'm on Threads now. I did have a big Twitter presence because, you and I and lots of other people started early days with that. But it's just got too stressful being on Twitter now. But I like Threads.
Okay.
So and Threads is available in Europe now as well. So I'm on Threads as Bray's Cottage, and you might be able to put a link to that as well.
I will do that. Well, thanks again. It's lovely to catch up and see you and chat, natter, as we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
And I hope to reconnect again when we try and do that pork pie video at some point.
Yes, that's going to test my technical skills, isn't it?
Right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.
Bye.